Hi there, welcome to lesson 2 of the Alcohol Ink on Metal workshop. I really hope that you guys enjoyed last week's video and that you learned something, and it was absolutely wonderful to see some of you share your pictures in the Facebook group on how you used those techniques and made them your own. That just brings such joy to my heart to see you guys playing around with it. So thanks for sharing. All right, so in this week's class, I'll be showing you how to paint directly with alcohol ink on metal. So the first thing I'll show you is how to paint with undiluted ink, and then also how you can stretch your ink even further and how it can be more economical for you to use your inks by diluting it a little bit, but then also some tips and tricks associated with that, because the moment you dilute it, it makes all the ink spread. So I'll just be sharing some tips around that. Then the other thing you'll be learning this week is how to use your metal and alcohol ink with stencils. So that's something that's really fun, and it just gives a whole different look to your work. And then the other thing that you'll be learning is how to seal your work. So with alcohol inks, they can fade after a while. So I prefer to seal my work with some sealant spray or even clear acrylic medium that you can paint over. So that just protects it, and especially if you hang your work somewhere in the house where it might get some sunshine, then I'd say 100% seal your work. All right, so that's coming up in this video. And at the very end, I'll show you how to embellish some of the painted alcohol ink projects with metallic markers. So how you can add you can just keep adding to alcohol ink. You can either keep adding different layers of color, or you can then start embellishing your designs with permanent markers, metallic markers. So that's all coming up. So again, if you guys have any questions, please pop those into the Facebook group. And if you want a live Q&A, please let me know your time zone so that I can set that up at a time where it suits everybody. All right, you guys, have fun. I'll see you at the end of the video.
Okay, so for this technique, I already have my little embossed leaves. As you can see, I don't ever throw anything away. So even a small piece of offcut from a previous project like this, I still go on and I create leaves, and I use that in my work later on. You can use these as embellishments for cards or gift boxes or whatever. So I'm quite a thrifty crafter. I save everything, and I try and use as much of it as I possibly can. So anyway, so the key thing to remember is once you've polished your metal, I'm actually just going to wipe this down again. After polishing and cleaning it, just make sure there's no residue on your pewter before applying your alcohol ink or your paints, because if there's oily residue on your metal, your paint won't stick. So there we go. And I actually just want to grab you this one to show you what it looks like. So this is a flower I've done a little while ago, and I've just painted the alcohol ink straight onto the flower. So you can see I need to do some touch-ups there, but that's what it looks like when you use undiluted ink. And this is the one I used, was the eggplant. So undiluted, just straight up with a paintbrush, and I'm going to show you how that works. So make sure your brushes are clean, well, fairly clean. And then pick your colors. So I'm just going to go for the piñata because it's quite a vivid color. I want to show you what that looks like. So with this technique, I literally just drop a drop of the ink onto my brush and just start painting it. So nothing fancy. What's beautiful about this technique is it really does still let the shine and the shimmer of the metal come through. So you've got this beautiful, shiny, shimmery look. So just see how far you go. If you need to add another drop, then go for it. So as you can see, let me just do this bit over here. So I'm going to cut this out, so I'm not really bothered about the edges. So this is just a quick little thing. So what's pretty about this is you can still see all the detail underneath. So the patina from the little veins on the leaf, you can still see shine through. So I think this is just gorgeous, the way that you can paint directly onto it. So now if I want to use a different color on my little stems, I'm just going to clean my brush quickly with a couple of spritzes of the hand sanitizer, just to remove this color, because otherwise if I add another color onto this color alcohol ink, they'll start playing together and you'll get something that you maybe didn't intend, but it can also work in your favor. So, you know, you just have to play. All right, so I'm going to use a darker green on the little stems. Let's see what that looks like. So this one's called Clover, and it's one of the Adirondack Ranger alcohol inks. So there you go. I can make them a little bit darker if I want. Adding another layer. I actually quite like the look of that, but just to show you, just as a demonstration, whoops, you can go over it again and increase the depth of color. I do want to show you what happens when you put another color alcohol ink over the previous layer. So I'm just going to use the same green. Actually, let me get a thinner brush. So I'm going to use a very fine tipped brush. But now the moment I put this on, you'll see that the alcohol ink is going to start spreading the previous color. So adding one color on top of another one pushes the first one out. So you're just going to have to play and figure out how this medium works, what you like, what you don't like, you know, just play around with it. I'm just going to do some of the veins quickly just to show you. And it keeps moving for a little bit. So that's what happens, and it forms these little edges. Let me just see if you guys can see that properly. So it forms these little edges. As the alcohol ink pushes the previous color out, it makes these darker edges on the ends of it. So I think it, you know, it probably makes it look a bit more realistic. But again, as I say, just have a play. So that's the way to paint onto the metal directly. So I didn't use any of the isopropyl alcohol to dilute it. You can, like with the really strong colors like the passion purple, you can absolutely do that. So I'll make another project quickly and I'll show you if you dilute it, what happens then. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, this is just a piece of aluminium that I just played around one evening, just, you know, sitting and doodling. So it's just aluminium. I just did some textures on it. So I want to show you when we dilute the ink. So I'm going to use a strong color like the piñata purple, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. But always remember to clean your brushes in between. Otherwise, you're going to get up with a very funky color that probably you didn't intend to get. You can obviously also use just a clean brush, but don't forget to, what you can do is, after you've painted with your alcohol inks, pop some plain isopropyl alcohol into one of these little cups and just rinse your brushes. So whenever you want a clean alcohol ink, use isopropyl alcohol. Okay, this is taking a bit long, so I might just get a new brush. Let's just do that. That one looks fairly clean. Okay, so I already have a little bit of isopropyl alcohol in my cup, so I'm going to use that to dilute the piñata. Shall we do purple? I don't even know what this is. Let's do purple. Okay, so I'm going to put 1 drop. And I might add a bit more alcohol just to show you how far you can dilute it. So as far as ratios go, gosh, that's going to be personal preference. So I'd say always start with, and depending on the size of your project as well, I think this is plenty. So start with little amounts and adjust as you go. Don't mix up massive amounts of anything and then you have to waste it. Okay, so I'm just going to go for it and just paint. I might actually show you. Let's do this one and that color. I might dilute it a little bit further and do each one differently just to show you the difference in the color concentration. So let's add another couple of drops of alcohol. Thin that right down. And what I'll do over here is I'll just use it straight up on certain parts of it. So you can see the color is quite intense when you just use it undiluted. Okay, now obviously there's a little bit still left on my brush. So let's use that over here. Okay, so this is by no means going to be perfect. This is just a quick demo. But you can see, so I haven't put any extra of the purple on my brush, and I'm still going. It's a very, very economical way of crafting. I couldn't believe how long these alcohol inks have lasted me. And just look at that shine, because you can still see the metal coming through. It's just gorgeous. So now that I have a little bit of the diluted ink left, let's just see. So you can get different tones of the same color by just diluting it a little bit and getting different tones of your colors. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so there we have that one. So this is diluted with a couple of drops. So that was literally 1 drop of the ink with a couple of drops of alcohol, and you can see the color is very, very faded. This one over here is the color straight up, so very, very concentrated, and I had the most ink on my brush on this part here. Then I moved on to that one, and without adding any other color on my brush, that's what I got. So you can see now, here's the thing. You can see the moment I added the isopropyl alcohol and painted this bit, it actually moved over the edge and it started pushing that little bit away there. So you can go in and fix it. you might have to play around a bit, because now the whole thing is going to start playing, which might actually give a cool texture. So I'm just going to do some dots, and instead of painting, I'm going to show you what that does. So again, using this kind of technique adds texture onto texture. So you've got the pattern that the colors are making on top of the texture that you've had on your metal. So just a really cool medium, and I just encourage you to play. Like everything I offer you is an invitation to go and sit down, grab your art supplies, and just have a go, just have some fun and see what happens. And don't be afraid to use your offcuts for this kind of thing. I mean, I can go out and, you know, cut this out and use it in a different project later on. I have no idea what what it would be. It's, you know, it's sort of a weird thing, but just have fun. You can layer different kinds of things on top of it, different colored metal pieces or different shapes or whatever, and create an abstract artwork. You know, who cares? Just have fun. Just play around. Okay, so we do have a little bit of the diluted purple ink left. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use another piece of metal, just plain smooth metal on, for this one. You can obviously use it on texture as well, but I want to show you a different thing that you can do. Okay, I just want to move the ink around a little bit. You can obviously pop some newspapers or whatever down if the mess worries you. But we know that plain alcohol removes most of it, so it's not a big issue. Okay, so this is something else that you can use your, if you have a little bit of leftover ink, you can create some beautiful backgrounds with that. Okay. Let me just grab. Okay, so I'm going to use my little fine tip brush again. I just want to make sure it's clean because I think there's still some green on here. Which actually, I'm going to show you what happens. So, if there's some painters, you know, on the call today, you'll know that when you mix green and purple, if you use, let's say, oil paints or acrylic paints, you'll get mud, right? It'll just go all brown on you. But I want to show you what's cool about the alcohol ink is I can go in and use colors that don't normally go together. So I'm just going to use a drop over here. And because the alcohol reacts, I might use a bit more. Don't want to squirt too much on there. I just want to show you how to make little dots. So it sits on top and it'll push the color that's beneath it, it'll push it out of the way. So you won't get these two to mix necessarily. So you can do little dots. The other thing you can do is, let me just grab a different brush. Actually, just give me a second. I'm just going to clear out, just wipe out this little cup and put some normal alcohol in there and show you what we can do with this now. Okay, so I'm just cleaning that out. So I'm going to add a little bit more alcohol into my cup. And I'm going to just quickly clean this brush. That is beautiful. Oh, actually, let me do the bigger one for that. You can see in the time that I've been doing that, how these inks have just started moving all by themselves. I haven't done anything to them. They just started spreading and playing all on their own. So what I can do is, if I add a drop of alcohol to that, see what it does? It spreads the color that was underneath out, and the second color will make this beautiful rim. So that's another way that you can create some beautiful backgrounds and textures and whatever. I'm going to do another one. So adding plain isopropyl alcohol. So what we've done is I diluted some of my purple ink with the isopropyl alcohol. I applied that as a background. Then I added some green. So normally purple and green, if you mix them, you get brown. So I've added teeny tiny drops of the green, and then I added a little drop of isopropyl alcohol again over that. So we can do it with this one as well and see what it does. And it's teeny tiny amounts. It's just a little drop. So see what's happening here. That's really cool. Is the green is on the one side and the purple edge is on this side. So I just love how you can mix these, well, not mix them together, but the fun effects that you can get playing around with it. So let me grab my little brush, and I want to show you when we add blue to it. So I'm going to use the Pinata blue, which is very concentrated again. And there's a little bit of green on my brush still, so let's see what happens. So I'm just going to make a squiggle. So this is just literally to show you what happens. You can now go back, and I can even add another dot of the blue over there. So you can go as abstract or as realistic as you want to go. So it's a little bit more wet on that side, so let's see what that does. And we can also add just 1 or 2 drops plain alcohol, and that'll give you lighter color dots. Even though the alcohol ink, the bottom layer, is now completely dry by this point, every time I add alcohol to it, it starts reacting again. So you just get to decide when you want to stop, you know. So with this one, there's that little blue streak going through, and if you don't like that, you can just dab a little bit of your paper towel and you can remove that. So if I want to go back in and I want to add another color, let's do, what shall we add? Let's go for cranberry. So cranberry on its own is not going to do much until I add either another color, or what I can do is I can go back and I can blow on it. And you can do little bursts. So again, you know, just have fun with it, start playing and see what you can get. Okay, so our next technique is quite fun. So I'm going to show you how to use stencils with alcohol ink. So what you're going to need is obviously a piece of your metal, a stencil. Now, the only thing you need to keep in mind is that once you've got alcohol ink on here, you can clean it, but you might get some colors on your stencil. So you might not be able to remove it completely. So decide beforehand whether your stencils are precious enough to not use them for this, or, you know, buy, say, just specifically for alcohol ink. Okay, so what I'm going to do, excuse me, the best strategy is to secure it with a little bit of masking tape. We don't want our stencils to move around. So I'm just going to stick it on my little board. And that way it's easy to get out of the way when it needs to dry again. Okay, so I'm just using normal masking tape and just sticking it down. You want to make sure that your stencil is nice and flat on the metal, otherwise if it lifts, then, you know, your inks will move around underneath it. So, oopsie, it's sticking to my glove. Okay, that should do. Right, so the next thing we want to do is, there's two ways to do this. I'll show you both ways. The first one is to lightly spray your metal and your stencil, like that. And then adding in the drops of your ink. And now you can see where you need this to go, so you can be quite specific in which areas you want it to let go. So this way obviously uses more ink than the other way I'm going to show you. And I think the color I've chosen for that bit is a little bit too light. So let me use this blue. I choose some of the darker green. And there's a different green as well, so let's use some of this. Okay, so that is the first technique. Okay, and then the other way to use it, let me just stick it down again. Okay. The next tool I'm going to show you is not a necessity, but it is fun to have. So Tim Holtz sells these little tools with a set of 10 felt pieces, I think for about anything between $10 and $15. So I've gone out, I bought the set originally, and then I just went and I bought a really thin piece of felt Oh, I nicked my glove. Let me just grab another one quickly. Okay, so what I was saying is I went out and I bought, oh gosh, about half a meter. I think it was about a meter length and it's about 50 or 60 centimeters wide for $10. So this will literally probably last me the rest of my lifetime because you don't use them that often. But it's a really cool way of applying ink to other surfaces. So I'll show you two different ways to use this. And this is where you use your alcohol blending solution. So the difference between the alcohol blending solution and isopropyl alcohol is the isopropyl, the moment you, like in the previous videos I've showed you, when you add a drop of the plain alcohol onto your metal, once you've applied your color, it spreads it. So blending solution blends it, and it's almost like it brings it all together again. So what I'm going to do, and I'll show you in this technique, is I'm going to apply a couple of drops of the blending solution onto my applicator tool. And I'm going to use the same color scheme as the previous one for the stencil. So I'm going to add a couple of drops of blue and a few, let's do dark green and a couple of the lighter green. Okay, and then I might just add a couple more. So what this does is it blends all your colors together beautifully, but I think I might do this a different way. Okay, so the stencil idea didn't work too well. I'll show you, excuse me, I'll show you a different way to use that. So this is what we got. So that's not really the effect I was looking for, but what you can do with the applicator tool is you can create these beautiful colored backgrounds like this. So just literally applying a couple of drops of color and then putting it on your metal, and it creates a more sort of a softer look. So it's not as harsh as some of the other ones that I've shown you. And you can just go in and blend, blend, blend until you like the look of it. Okay, so I'm going to put that aside to dry, and I'll show you a technique with the stencil that I think will work better. So just hang in 1 second. Okay, so what I've done is I've quickly used a little piece of metal, just an offcut, and I've just pushed it through the stencil. So that way, I don't know if I hold it up like that, it's almost on the same surface. It might be raised a little bit higher even than the surface. So that'll give us a better effect than just having the stencil, flush on the metal, because it seems like we use a lot of ink to get the same result. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to re-ink my little tool quickly. So drop of blue, some green, and some of the lighter green. And then just a couple of drops of blending solution again. Okay, so we'll see what that looks like when it dries. We might need just a little bit more ink because the blending solution does dilute it a little bit. Yeah, that's better. So I'm going to let that dry, and if we need to reapply it, then I'll just do that quickly. And I think that's going to do the trick. Okay, so what I'm going to show you in this video is how you can apply metallic colors over your alcohol inks. So for this project, let me just quickly show you these leaves that we've made. Okay, so I've cut them out with a needle tip cutting tool. On the one side, we applied a different color, a darker color green over the original one. And you can see as we applied the alcohol ink on top of the first color, it spread the color beneath further out and it created these little borders. So on the left hand side, we didn't apply anything else, just the original green color alcohol ink, but you can still see the veins of the leaf shine through with the patina that we applied on the pewter. So if you want to take this a step further, you can use any of these permanent metallic markers. So Sharpies are great for this. Staedtler has some metallic markers, and the Big brand also has some. And you can get these in bronze, copper, silver, gold even. So I just want to show you how you can keep adding dimension and depth to your projects. I just want to get a fine tipped. This one's fairly fine. Let's just have a look. Okay. I'm just looking for, for one with a finish tip. Okay, so this one will do. So with some of these paint pens, you just need to shake them up well before using them. And press and hold to let the ink flow. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a layer of gold on top of the dark green. And we'll see what that does. Probably in this case, the silver would have been better, but I don't have such a fine tip silver pen, so we'll just go with the gold for now. And as you can see, because my little leaf is angled or rounded, it's a little bit wobbly, which is perfectly fine because that just gives it, let me just bring it closer a little bit. It just gives it a little bit more dimension, so just adding some interest. So if you want to do the same on the left-hand side, now this is the part that's entirely up to you. So you can take this as far as you want to go with it. You can keep adding layers, keep adding colors or metallics or whatever on top of these. Or if you're happy with the veins, the way they look, you just leave it all alone. So just for the sake of showing you a different one. Okay, so I'm going to use the Staedtler. It's got a thicker tip. So this might actually throw the whole thing off now. I'm just going to show you. I'm actually going to go in between because I quite like the look of the veins. So I'm just going to add almost like highlights to this one. So going in between the little veins. Okay, so as you can see, this is not as vivid or bright as the gold. It'll also depend on the kind of color that you've used on your leaf. So if, for instance, you've used a dark blue or a dark purple, the silver would stand out more because there's more of a contrast. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Now, if you want to seal your project, there are various ways to do it. If you want to seal alcohol ink, my best recommendation is to use a spray varnish that is acrylic. So an acrylic clear spray varnish. You can either use gloss or satin or what's the other one? Gloss, satin, or I don't know, the shiny one. Oh, gloss. Or matte. That's the other one, matte. So depending on the look you want to go for, I prefer using a gloss or a satin just because it adds to that beautiful reflection of the metal anyway. If you go matte, it takes that away a little bit. So always use a water-based or an acrylic one if you use alcohol ink, because if you use a solvent-based spray, it'll reactivate the inks and your project won't look like this. It'll just reactivate and it'll start playing all on its own. So I hope that makes sense.
Well, hey you guys, there we go. I hope you learned something new in this lesson and that you'll be able to express it in a way that feels authentic to you. So your homework for the week is to try one or two of these techniques if you have some time on your hands. It doesn't have to take long. If you don't have time, don't do a whole project. I really just want you guys to get a feel for it, because the sooner we can start implementing these techniques and playing around with it, the sooner you'll get the hang of it and the sooner you'll feel confident and comfortable in using alcohol ink in your work, like I said, in a way that feels true to you. All right, so share those pictures in the Facebook group. If you guys have any questions, you can either email me or just ask in the Facebook group, just create a comment thread, or even just post your question on your work, like on the post that you've shared of your project, and I'll respond to those as soon as I can. All right, I'll see you next week.